A good contract is worth its weight in gold. Are you a creative entrepreneur who contracts your services to others? Well, listen up, because this is for you. The Smithers Law Group has created 14 master contracts specifically for creative entrepreneurs. These contracts are industry specific, they're fully customizable, and you only pay a one-time fee. This is so much better and more affordable than speaking with an attorney who's going to charge you an hourly consultation fee, and it's so much more secure than just Googling up your contract and hoping for the best. Find your fully customizable and industry-specific contract at stulawgroup.com. Search for the contract link. And don't forget to tell them that I sent you.
I don't know, there's so much freedom that comes with like being an entrepreneur, even though there is like the stress of like making the payroll or paying yourself. I'm just really enjoying how creative I am outside of when it comes to creating content. Like I'm starting to become so creative around like other ways to make money. And I think I'm really loving the fact that like God is really sending me people to really help me build this. And like I was constantly praying like, God, I need a business coach. Like I need like a team. I need like mentorship. And I feel like this past year, God has really been lining up the right people to help me do those things. And so I think that makes like me enjoying the journey a lot easier.
Yeah. Welcome back to Impostrix Podcast. My name is Whitney Knox-Lee, and I'm your host. This is Season 3 of Impostrix Podcast, where we are focusing on validating small business owners of color, entrepreneurs, and folks who unfortunately are navigating employment discrimination in their workplace. Impostrix Podcast always puts folks of color first. So all of our guests are people of color who are sharing about their personal experience or their learned experience. So buckle up, let's go. Hey friends, and welcome back to Impostrix Podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Knox-Lee. I'm here today with Denee Barrington. I am super excited for this conversation, as I'm excited for all of our conversations. But one thing that I'm looking forward to with this conversation is that we're talking to a creative. And I think most of my conversations have been with people that are in what you would call white collar jobs, office jobs, and stuff like that. And I always love the perspectives that I'm getting from people who are creatives. And so Meah is a producer and she's a founder of the Reel Noir Network. And I'm going to give her a chance to talk to us about that. Meah, will you introduce yourself and your identities that you're bringing to this conversation?
Yeah. I'm a creative producer. I've been in the creative field since I graduated college in 2012. So I started off my career as a videographer, doing a lot of event coverage and making videos for small business owners. And then I slowly transitioned into being an assistant editor, and finally started working in the film industry, being a production assistant. And I realized I did not like being at the bottom. So I then transitioned into digital media, and I've been there ever since. I got my first full-time corporate job when I was 27, working for Condé Nast, which is a really big magazine platform. If you don't know, they own, I think, like 15 plus magazines, some of those being Vogue, GQ, Travel, or Condé Traveler, Architectural Digest. But I worked specifically for Allure and Glamour for half the time I was there. And at the end of last year, I quit corporate America and I started as a full-time entrepreneur, working with my business, the Reel Noir Network, which is a Black entertainment news site where we provide production resources to filmmakers of color. So we're really just focused on helping the journey of the Black filmmaker be easier, more accessible, and that's my main thing, and spotlighting talent that is up and coming and that are doing amazing things in the film industry.
Thank you. And what is your racial identity?
I'm African American. Yeah. No, it's funny because like when I moved to New York from down south, I never really had to identify with identity as much as I did down south, or
Mm-hmm.
as much as I did in the north. Because here people are like, "What are you mixed with?" And I'm like, "I'm black." Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
white or we're black. So yeah, I identify as a black woman, but I have Caribbean descent, specifically from Barbados. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I like to know because I like to know where you're coming from, and I think our listeners want to know where we're coming from. So thank you. So the Real Noir Network really sounds like a um, supportive resource that maybe you could have used when you were starting out. Would you? Did you make the resource that you wish you would have had?
Oh yeah, most definitely. That was the whole like genesis of building the company. Was it started off as a blog where I just wanted to spotlight like really dope talent. I was obsessed with like black web series and this group of black filmmakers. This is when Issa Rae first came on with Awkward Black Girl, and then there was Black and Sexy TV with Dennis Dortch and Numa Perrier, who's like really big now. And I was just amazed at like what they were creating. And I wanted to spotlight to highlight them, but also the people I personally knew. And then on top of that, it was like my journey to get into the industry was so hard. And I felt so like not seen as a black woman, especially. And I felt like I was always told that being a director was basically impossible. That was my dream to be like,
Mm,
Ava DuVernay, who was also like making this big like comeback, and I wouldn't say comeback, but she was making this big like appearance in film for the first time with Middle of Nowhere, which was like her first film. And anyways, so I was obsessed with film, and I just felt like it was really hard to get my foot in the door. Like I didn't get a real full-time film job until I worked at HBO, which I was like 26, and I moved to New York when I was like 21. So yeah, I just wanted a space to spotlight Black people and our excellence when it comes to film. And I really hope that, like, with not hope, but so far with what I've been doing with the company is really helping people get more experience on their resume. So I will hire people to work on the website. So I have writers. I'll hire people to do our content. So editing, I've helped people build up their portfolio editing wise. And then also just like my connections will reach out to me when people need jobs, so that's been really helpful too. And then we just started the events, mostly remotely right now, but we have done some really amazing in-person events. We do an annual Real High film screening where we showcase filmmakers' comedic shorts. Some of them deal with weed, some don't. We smoke, we have a good time. And we just give those filmmakers a spotlight because it's
mhm.
so hard to create productions. It's such a team like environment, and so whenever we can come together and spotlight filmmakers and creatives, like I just especially love doing that.
Thank you for breaking that down because as someone who is not at all like podcasting was my first foray into any kind of media, period. I can't even imagine how difficult it must be a filmmaker and to like be I don't know if even successful is the right word because that's objective, but to like have people see your work and appreciate your work. Um, I've experienced this game of marketing and like I can't figure it out and I don't even care about like I don't even care anymore. But with film and some of these other art types that I just imagine that so much work goes into not only creating the art but then getting it out there. So I'm really interested to learn more. And so what we are talking about today is specifically like the transition from having a full-time job that's paying your bills and that's stable to launching into entrepreneurship, and what that transition was like for you. But where I'd like to start is as you're a business owner, I want to learn about how this came about. And when I say that, what I mean is how did it occur to you to start your own? Because many of us we see a problem and we look for the resource. If the resource isn't there, we're like, dang, it should be there, but like, I am not going to do it. I'm going to continue my job at Condé Nast. So for you, what happened to click for you to be like, okay, like I need to actually go pursue this?
Yeah, I mean, I have been so the Reel Noir Network was originally called The Real Effect, and I had been doing that for like 5 years. So it was basically a strong hobby because at this point I'm making money here and there, but it's not a full time like business that's really paying
Okay.
bills. And so this past year we rebranded, and or not this past year, like last month we dropped a new whole company basically, the Real Noir Network. And even before that at Conde, I had really been struggling for about a year, um, with like a whole bunch of reorgs. I had been there for 4 years and I had been through like 4 or 5 reorgs. It was just like exhausting. So by the last one, I was just on a team that like my supervisor and my boss, neither one of them hired me. I was just put on their team. And I really didn't feel supported at all. I didn't feel like I was growing as a creative, as a leader, as a manager. So um, I, I started feeling that way in like September of 2022. And so I didn't leave until October of 2023. So I kind of had a year of like slowly looking for jobs, thinking, oh, I could find another opportunity somewhere else. And then it just got to the point of like early last year, like I had a yearly review, and then this supervisor is telling me things that supposedly I did wrong 6 months ago, but never gave me the opportunity to correct them or address them. But I could feel that I was being punished for it for the past 6 months. Like I felt that you weren't giving me, not just felt, but saw that you weren't giving me opportunities anymore. And that when I was asking for certain things, I wasn't given the time and the space to like excel at them. So it was like I had been feeling these things forever, but I had no real like evidence of why it was happening. Um, so that was kind of like it hit the nail on the head for me. And I was just like, okay, I really have to get out of here now. So even that still took another 8 months of me, because in my mind, after I went through that whole process of like thinking I'm going to quit like the next day and like feeling like I want to quit every other day, I eventually was like, well, maybe I can transfer to another team. Like maybe I can really like shift my mentality and really start like taking advantage of certain things, because they were kind of transitioning me from YouTube, which I primarily created content for YouTube, and they were transitioning me to like more social. And I was like, okay, maybe I can like take over social and really do things that I want to do, like be on camera more, do like videos in the streets, talk to people. And I really tried, but like my heart was like not there anymore. Um, so thankfully during that whole process, I was still like, I'm like a very frugal person. So, so like this whole process, I'm like, I have the Roth IRA stacked. I have like my backup savings. Um, and so by the time I finally decided to quit, I was like, okay, I feel comfortable. Like I have at least a year's worth of like savings, and I feel like I could like do this full time. I feel like I could really make my company work full time. Um, yeah, I just finally took a chance on myself, even though I didn't realize there's so much to be done when it comes to like really building out a business. So a year of savings went to like 6, 8 months, but I don't regret it. I don't regret leaving and like taking a chance on myself. I was going through like back and forth of like feeling like really scared and feeling like, oh my God, how am I going to make money? Like, am I going to get any other opportunities? Feeling imposter syndrome, to feeling like excited and being like, fuck the system. Like, I don't even care about her. Like, they did me dirty. Like, to then like the next week feeling like, oh my God, what did I do again? So it's like, it was a roller coaster of emotions, but I definitely don't regret it, because I feel like once I left, so many doors and opportunities have opened up for me. And like, so many more new people have started wanting to work with me outside of the business that I have. Like, people just want me to create content for them and they want to pay me for it. So I'm like, oh, this in itself is like another business that I didn't even think about. And so currently I'm thinking about creating like a creative studio within my business. So yeah, it's been pretty good so far, and I'm really thankful.
Hey, y'all. So let's switch gears for just a minute. We talk so much about empowerment of folks of color on this show. And now I want to take a second to talk about our legacy. It's so important that as we're out here doing our thing and making that money and trying to be the people that we want to be for our communities and families, that we get our estate plan together. And I know estate planning can be overwhelming. We've got your back. Our team is here to guide you every step of the way. Wills for the People is an estate planning practice that prioritizes creating and advancing generational wealth, particularly within families of color and middle-class families. This is because it's so important that we just get started. So, what do you want your legacy to be? And what steps have you taken to ensure that that happens? Take those steps with Wills for the People, where intentional planning meets transformative results. Visit our website for your free consultation at willsforthepeoplega.com. Mention Impostrix Podcast and we'll give you 10% off of your package. All right, I'll see you over there. Let's get back to the show. So much of what you just talked about, resonates with me so deeply because I'm going through that right now, being in my first year of a startup. Things like having the savings, but not calculating for the actual cost of startup.
Yes. Oh my God. And it's like, now I'm like trying new systems. I'm like, what email system do I really want to use? Do I like MailChimp or do I like Flowdesk? And like, you're like paying all these like fees for so many things you didn't really think about.
Yep. Yep. I have so many subscriptions, all the things, and I don't really know. I guess I thought they were going to be free, or maybe I just didn't think I needed these things. Like, I don't know, but it wasn't calculated into my, like, I don't know, startup expenses. And then I started budgeting. And even when I started budgeting, it still wasn't calculated because I think it was really more of, I didn't know that I was going to need these things.
Yeah.
And so for me, I spend a lot of time educating myself around entrepreneurship and business ownership because I'm somebody that has zero experience in it.
Same.
I actively avoided business classes in school. And so like, I know nothing. And luckily, I'm in Atlanta, there's lots of resources. And I've been able to make use of those resources, but I definitely could relate to that.
I would love to say something on that note of like learning how to be an entrepreneur, because like I was raised by an entrepreneur. My mom is an accountant, but she had her broker's license. So I always saw entrepreneurship in my future, but it wasn't like she was sitting down and giving me business classes. Like, outside of like really knowing how to like save money and invest it, I feel like this whole process has been me learning how to be an entrepreneur. And I think sometimes people really forget that like everybody's not an entrepreneur. Like, some people like instantly have it in them. Like, the people are like, yeah, I was selling candy at school when I was 10. I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about that. Like, so
I was buying the candy.
yeah, like I wasn't thinking anything about that. So now as an adult, like, you really have to learn, and like that whole process happens while you're building, which is also challenging in itself. So I commend you for taking the chance on yourself, because like that's like the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing that I'm relating to in your story, and that frankly I have just heard over and over and over again as I'm preparing episodes for season 3 and as I'm talking with people networking, is the experience that many of us have of went into entrepreneurship because stuff at work wasn't right. And similarly to you, like, I had a side hustle. I was doing consulting for a long time while working my full-time job. So I was able to kind of step out on a business that had already been created. I just wasn't calling it a business. And so, I was able to have some income coming in right away from contracts that I had ongoing. but so many of us were fired from toxic environments, were pushed out of toxic environments. Myself found myself on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. That sounds similar to what you experienced, except for they told me that I was going to be fired in 30 days if I didn't do something different.
Mhm.
But it was one of those bring up issues that apparently were issues, but that I didn't know were issues
Yeah.
from 6 months ago. Um, so many of us. And I mean, I believe this happens more to Black women, but also I'm only really talking to Black women. So, like, I don't know what everybody else is experiencing, but I've had so many of these conversations, and it's dawning on me just how pervasive it is. Because we talk and we hear a lot in media right now about Black women in leadership and Black women in academia, and the poor treatment that folks are experiencing. Um, but it really took some time for me to relate that back to myself because, the circumstances I thought were a little bit different. Maybe like it was more blatant at their work than it was at my work. Um, but as I'm learning more about just, other like regular people, um, no, my experience is definitely very like your experience
Mhm.
and a lot of the other guests that I'm having on this season, that like we are creatives, like we ideate. I
Yeah.
don't, maybe it's not a word, I don't know. But we think of stuff, right? Like we have ideas and we move on them. And in a position where you're being pushed out of a workspace or you're not being appreciated or it's actually hostile, um, that has been a jumping off point for many people. I look forward to the day where I talk to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, work was fine, I just decided it was time to leave. But so far that has not happened. But to your point and leading to my next question, like, so much good can come out of like this situation that was very uncomfortable, very damaging. Um, I went to therapy. Like I saw a career coach and went to therapy about what I was experiencing. Um, but for you, what have you loved about being 100% into the Real Noir Network?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I feel like I'm finally learning to like love the journey. You know how people are always like, love the journey. And I'm just like, what does that mean? So I like the other day I was like, wow, I feel like I'm really like enjoying this journey of entrepreneurship, even though it's like very tiring. But I'm so excited to like work all day on something that I am creating. And, you know, I'm so excited to go out and network with people and tell people what I'm doing. And even though like this past week was discouraging because I was supposed to have an event this Thursday and I had to cancel
Mm.
it because people didn't buy tickets. So
Mm.
that in itself, I was like, dang, like, is what I'm doing enough? Like, am I doing the right thing? But then I was just like, you have to keep doing it. Like, you've had successful events in the past. This might have just been the wrong weekend because Memorial Weekend's about to come, like, and those are the things that it's like trial and error of your business. Um, but it's like, I don't know, there's so much freedom that comes with like being an entrepreneur, even though there is like the stress of like making the payroll or paying yourself. Um, I'm just really enjoying how creative I am outside of when it comes to creating content. Like I'm starting to become so creative around like other ways to make money. And I think I'm really loving the fact that like God is really sending me people to really help me build this. And like
Mm.
I was constantly praying like, God, I need a business coach. Like I need like a team. I need like mentorship. And I feel like this past year, God has really been lining up the right people to help me do those things. And so I think that makes like me enjoying the journey a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then I always was praying that like well, I was praying before when I was looking for a new job. I was like, I really just want people, I want to work with people that like see me and see my vision and see my talents,
Hmm.
allow me to execute on those things. But that prayer has transformed into my clients. Like my clients see my
Wow.
gifts, and I'm just like so thankful to be in a space where it's like they're like, yeah, whatever you want to do, like we trust your expertise. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Isn't that a trip? Like going from a place where you're not trusted,
Mm-hmm.
um, to people now are willing to pay you, like you as the boss, money, and they trust you.
Yeah.
They trust your vision, they trust your experience and expertise. Um, it's still baffling to me. Uh, and yeah, it's a trip. I appreciate your sharing about needing to cancel this event, and I don't wanna belabor the point, but I think it's so important because, I don't know, entrepreneurship can look sexy,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when who you're looking at are people who are 10 years down the road
Oh yeah.
with their
Money's coming
businesses.
in. It's so sexy.
Yeah, and, like, maybe they have actual office space, or maybe they have, like, the Rolodex of clients, or maybe, you go to an event and it's, like, packed and successful, but we don't talk very publicly about what's happening up until that time, and, like, I've had a virtual event where nobody showed up to it, and it does allow space for reflection because then you're like, "Okay, so was it the timing of the year or of the week or of the day?"
Yeah.
What were the various issues, and learning how not to be so sensitive in terms of, like, my hurt feelings that nobody wanted to come, um, because it's business. And part of the role of being an entrepreneur and a CEO is learning about your market and learning about what they do want to attend, what they don't want to attend, what they want to invest in, either their time or their money or their energy. And sometimes it's not there,
Mm.
as far as what my vision is. Maybe just isn't the vision that other people have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And like this event, I did it last year and it was a good time. I had like 30 people show up. And then with trying to do it this year, I think I'm realizing that people, even though I want to create these spaces that are like fun and relaxing for creatives, I'm like, well, maybe I need to build the community first. Like maybe I really need to like work on providing them with like the actual resources and free information, and then they'll be more inclined to hang out with me. so, like, so it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
let me focus on the education part first, and then we'll get back to like the relaxation, holistic vibes that I will also want to provide filmmakers. But it's like it's baby steps. It's a journey. It's exactly what you said. It's like learning each time a failure hits. So
Yeah. So speaking of, we talked about money a little bit and just like some of the savings and stuff like that. I want to talk to you about raising capital for your business,
yeah.
and how you have gone about doing that because you got to have money in order to, be able to pay people, but also in order just to set up the infrastructure of the business. So how did you fund your business?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was self-funded, especially like those first 5 years. Yeah, it was all self-funded. I was paying all like every time I got a refund check for taxes, it went straight into the business. Um,
Mm,
and then so I didn't get my first grant until last year. It was a $15,000 grant, which was so helpful. It allowed me to pay for writers for a whole year. It's allowed me to do my rebrand. It's allowed me to redo the whole website. I trademarked my business finally,
wow.
and I still have a little bit left over to like do a few other things that I want to do, like a podcast and things like that. But even that was really like me stepping out and going to events. And so I went to this film event. My friend invited me, and they were honoring like some heavy hitters in the industry. And one of them works for a nonprofit called Critical Minded, where they basically give grants to filmmakers, writers, specifically writers. So any type of writing around film, they'll give you a grant for it. And so, built this relationship and applied. And this is not the typical way to get money, but I think it kind of is. It's like there is that process of like applying for grants, but then there's also the process of like using your contacts to get money.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was that situation for me. Because honestly, like I just wrote a really good letter and sent it to him. And he was like, hey, make these corrections. I'm going to send it to the board. And that was it. I got the money. So
Wow.
it was a blessing. And right now I'm also going through the process of applying to grants again. But this time I'm like using a grant writer and like, having them proofread my stuff because now I'm trying to get even more money. It's
Yeah.
not like a one-on-one connection. But I'm also thinking about really strategic ways to do fundraising. So, when I was young in middle school, we used to sell like orange boxes every winter for my marching band. And it was like
Orange boxes?
oranges, like they were huge crates of oranges, and people would buy them. Like we would sell like hundreds of orange. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
Was this in Florida?
no, we lived in North Carolina. So
I'm so confused by this citrus box. Like we sold candy
literally
bars.
a citrus box. Like some of them would have lemons, they would have all different types of oranges, and we would do it every year, and we would get so much money for our band. So I was like, okay, one of my friends did one around popcorn for her church.
Mm.
I was like, oh, that's actually really smart. So I'm gonna attempt to do that later this year. Is like just try to do more interesting ways of asking for money outside of like, can you donate? Because I feel like
Mm.
sometimes people, you have to press people. And that's one of the things I did learn about when I did help this web series that I produced. We raised $15,000 for the web series, but that process looked like having a strong email marketing campaign,
Mm.
and really like hitting people up for a month straight, like 3 times a day, and like reaching out on Facebook, like, and that included like a whole team of people's emails, like, like I think there was like 10 people on the crew, and they were like, hey, we need all of your email list. I was like, okay. But
You were those people, but you made the money.
we made $15,000. So that was a really good lesson in like email marketing is a thing that really does work. And I understand it now as a business professional, like how important it is to have an email list. But yeah, I'm really trying to figure out more creative ways to make money for the business this year outside of like putting my own money in.
Yeah. It's I'm just thinking about grants and what you said about like, is this the traditional way? Because what strikes me is that everything's about relationships.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons, I mean, in many areas, in education and jobs and workplaces, accessibility to money really depends on who you know. And of course, white folks have the networks.
Yeah.
They have deep, deep roots in these networks. And so, where I think, grant providers would have us believe that it's about the application. I think in reality, a lot of times when it is based on relationships.
Oh,
And I'll say, I was sharing this with you earlier that, Impostrix Podcast just got our first sponsor, which is amazing. Thank you. And that came from a conversation on this show.
mm-hmm.
It came from, creating a relationship with somebody, not asking for money.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I never did pitch myself for money. It was purely, just we were interested in talking and in like being in each other's networks. And then, she heard a commercial that I ran on my podcast for my own business and was like, oh, well, do you offer ad spots? Sure will.
Yes.
So, and I had been pitching sponsorships and had no responses. And so I had actually stopped pitching altogether because I was like, okay, let me focus on something else.
Hmm.
Um, because this isn't worth my time right now.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it is about relationships and reciprocity in terms of like what we add
Hmm.
to each other's like life or to each other's network or to, even in just a single conversation, the feeling that we left that person with. Like, did I leave a mark for them? Um, and so, yeah, I don't think that we talk enough about, especially in the podcasting industry, it's all about numbers and
Hmm.
how many listens, how many downloads, and if you're on the radio, how many markets you're in, and then pitching to potential sponsors with all of these numbers. But I think what we should be focusing on is relationship building because that's what podcasting is, a conversation.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree. And that's one of my big goals this year is to like really build my network, specifically of people that aren't Black. Because
all you white folks.
honest, and not even just the whites, the Latins, the Asians.
Yep.
Like, I think also while I've been on this journey of like working on my own, like sometimes I have this mindset of like, oh, nobody's gonna pay for that. But people got money. There's money out there. Like and my new clients, all of my clients thankfully are Black women, and I really appreciate that. And I have one Latin woman I work with, but they are paying me, and like because I shortballed myself with one of my clients, and she was like, oh no, we're gonna pay you this. And I was like, oh my God, thank you for seeing my value. So, like, and that's like really changing my perspective of like these businesses have money, and people are willing to also like invest in something that they feel like will help their business grow. And so that's changing my perspective a little bit.
Um, one of the things that I struggle with that I would love to know your perspective on is, we're dealing with such a small amount of money for growing a business that we wish we had all the money for.
Yeah.
How do you determine, like, what is a thing that I do need to actually spend money on versus a thing that maybe I can do myself or that I don't need? So maybe it's a product that I don't need, or for me, it was paying a friend to do a website instead of paying quadruple the amount for a professional website built because I was like, I just need something to get started and I'll revisit the website later.
Yeah.
How have you made decisions like that? What factors do you consider?
No, I think you're spot on. It's kind of like not being a perfectionist all the time. So like even with that, it's like what can't do I just need to get done right now versus what needs to like look perfect and amazing, or what's something that I know somebody that can do this for a discounted price. Like how like can I work with them? Like for example, I'm in a lot of film groups, but specifically I'm in this North Carolina film group where most of the filmmakers are from North Carolina A&T. So a lot of them are graduates, a lot of them are still in school. And so when I need like certain video projects where it's like, dang, I don't really have a full budget, but I can give them something, I'll hit up that group and I'll just be like, hey, like, can anybody give time to do this for like $25 an hour? And in college, that's a nice little check, $25 an hour. So yeah, I'll do little things like that where it's like I'll try to stretch the dollar where I can. And then it gets to a point where it's like, how much is my time? Like if I spend 3 hours on this and I'm losing $40 an hour versus paying someone $25 an hour to do this. So I think I've also gotten to the point where it's like, even though I could do this, I really need to do something else and spend more time on that because I also can't do everything. And that's like the biggest hurdle of being a solopreneur is like, oh my God, there's so many things to do and there's not enough time. And even if there is enough time, it's like, will I mentally and physically have the energy to do it? So I'm really trying to find a better balance of that. But yeah, I think it still is a struggle for me when it comes to like what I'm actually paying for versus what I'm not paying for. And sometimes my mentality is not the best because my mentality is always like more money will come. Even though I'm like on my last $500, I'm like, more money will come, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, use that with a grain of salt, that advice.
Right, right, because more money might not come. But I'm with you. Like I'm kind of, and I think a big part of it is relating to the class privilege that I've experienced growing up, which was that more money did always come.
Yeah,
Um,
agree.
at least as far as I was concerned. And even like my poorest years were in college when I just spent all the money. Like I had it, I just spent it on whatever I wanted, not caring and not seeing, what impact or result that was going to have for me later in the semester. So I was always like broke, broke, broke on like the last few days of the semester. Um, but I'll say, you talked about managing time, and that has been one of my deciding factors as well, as far as what I'm going to spend money on. Because I'm not great at a lot of things tech related.
Mm,
So things like creating organization systems to keep everything organized is not my thing. So I will pay for something that is going to make me more efficient,
mhm,
like a service or even a consultation, or like I will pay somebody to teach me how to do these things.
mhm.
Um, because I know that creating systems is a way that I'm losing money because I'm spending so much time trying to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, also you mentioned time, and that's also just a huge challenge, is having time to do it all and acknowledging that we don't always, even if we have the time, we might not have the capacity, like the emotional or mental capacity.
Yeah.
So how do you make that determination? Like when is it time for you to just stop for the day, or well, yeah, stop for the day?
Yeah, I started realizing. So one, I'm not married and I don't have kids, so that in itself is like an advantage that a lot of other people don't have when building a business. So I do recognize that. But I realized for me that Mondays and Tuesdays and maybe even Wednesdays, like I will go in. Like when I say go in, I'll work from like I normally start my day around 10 a.m. And I know that's a little late for some people, but that's how we do in media. I just always start at 10 a.m. It was 10 to 6. So I'll start my day at like 10, um, work pretty consistently till about like noon or 1, take a lunch break, um, work again. Maybe I'll take a little break at 3. Sometimes I might take a nap. And then I'll pick back up at like 5 or 6 and like go through the night. And like for me, I'm realizing like it's okay for me to go like 2 maybe 3 days that are extremely hard, and I'm able to do this also because I'm not spending time with my spouse or I'm not spending time with my kids. Like these are days where I'm just like, okay, I'm here by myself and I just feel extremely motivated on those days, so I just allow myself to do it. But then the rest of the week, I try to balance it a little bit better where it's like, okay, it's literally 5, 6 o'clock. Like I should be winding down and like, don't look at your to-do list again. Like chill out. And then another thing that's been really helpful for me is this planner. So I'm also really big on like planning. Because for me, like I'm the type of person that needs my space clean and I need my mind cleared for me to really be productive. So that means like if I have like things I need to do, I just need to write them down to get them out my head. So I used to just write everything down, and sometimes that would stress me out because it was like there was no order in when I was going to do these things. I would check them off randomly. So now I have this really amazing top 3 planner. It's by this businesswoman and creative called Erin. Erin on Demand. She's a YouTuber as well.
Mm.
She has this really amazing planner. Oops, sorry, for the people listening, but basically how it's set up is like you're supposed to list the top 3 things that you're going to do every day, and then it has like other things that you can do throughout the day, and then at the end you can reward yourself with something. And then what I really love is that she also breaks it down by the week. So like every week you need to list like what are your top 3 priorities for the week, what are some other like tasks you need to do that week. And then she breaks it down
I
even
love this.
more, which is something I never did. She breaks it down quarterly and like what are your top three
Oh.
goals for the month, and then what's the reward you're going to give yourself at the end of the month, which I really love. And oh, sorry, this is monthly, but then she also does do it quarterly too, where you write down your top quarterly goals. And hold on, I really want to find it so I could show it to you.
This sounds amazing. I love this because this is how I think. Like I need to have the short term um plan, but also I need to see how the short term plan fits into the longer term.
So quarterly, your top three goals for the quarter, and then what are you going to do for each goal to make it happen? And I never thought of things like that, and so it's just been a real game changer for me. With like especially my big goals, because like I've just been doing so much this year. Like I'm gonna drop a podcast, I'm gonna drop the new website, I'm gonna drop a membership platform. It's just like, okay, girl, when are you doing all of this and how are you getting it done? So some of the things have gotten done, some of them have been pushed, but this has helped me really like hit the goals in the way that I need to. So that's kind of how I work through my day, is I'll do those top three things and then everything else I'll just continue to add to the list. And if I don't finish it that day, I'll just add it to the next day. Yeah.
And do you do your top 3 like at the start of your day every day, or have you done it like at the beginning of the week
Yeah.
for the entire?
I kind of switch it up. So like certain days, I also have this thing where like on my desk, I have like Mondays I'll do business, Tuesdays I'll write content, Wednesdays I'll shoot the content. So I also try to go by that formula too. So like certain days I know I'm going to do certain things. So yeah, sometimes I'll do it at the beginning of the week. Sometimes I'll do it that day. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I know I'm not going to do this today. Let me just add it to the next day. So I'm a free flowing
So
spirit,
organized.
but I still need to be a little organized.
Yeah, clearly. I love this because like I said, I need a plan, but then I need to know why I have the plan. So like I need to know what the bigger picture is as well. Um I use like a one-page planner. So it's not a book, but it's like a page that you rip off at the end of the week, and it has every day of the week. It has the first thing you write is your affirmation of the week,
Mhm.
and then you write 3 goals of the week, and then it just has space for the day under the days, but then at the end of the week it has like things that went well, things that didn't go so well.
Oh, nice.
And then like, things for next week type of thing.
Mhm. Oh, just so you know, the planner is only 6 months. It's not a full year.
Mm,
So just FYI.
okay. Awesome. Um So you had mentioned at the beginning imposter syndrome, and I want to go back to that and talk to you about what your experience has been working in the Black creative industry specifically, or the Black entertainment industry. I mean,
Mhm.
um, because I feel like if you're working around other folks of color, like hopefully that's meaningful and helpful and fun and all the things. Um, and I get we could still experience imposter syndrome, feeling like we are fraud.
Mm.
Um, but I am a little surprised. So what was your experience? What has your experience been like?
Um, I've had all types of experiences because there's layers to it, because there's the indie filmmaker space. There's the actually working in corporate America for media company space. There's the big production space. So yeah, I've experienced the gatekeepers. I've experienced the people that feel like they're a little better. um, the people that don't really want to give you any time until they know who you are, or what are your credentials, like those type of
Mm,
things. But I've also experienced a lot of like great connections and like great circles of people, and so like many people that are like understanding and are so inspiring, because like Black creativity is like endless.
yeah.
Like the things that we were able to create is just amazing. And so being able to be in some of those spaces with just people that are so creative is like makes you step your game up and makes you even more inspired. So I've been in those spaces, which I love the most. And then I've been in spaces where like people have given me grace because I wasn't my best behavior, where I was struggling and going through some things and came to set a little grumpy or, and so I'm thankful for those spaces too, that have really like rolled with me from project to project. And it's like, even though we're still not working on the same projects, but like we're still a part of community now, like we're friends now. And I forgave you for doing that like 3 years ago. So I'm thankful for those spaces too. But yeah, I think there's layers to it. And I'm thankful for like the people that I've met that I worked with at Condé Nast, that we got opportunities together and like we're still friends and we still extend each other job opportunities and talk highly of each other when the other person's not in the room. So yeah, it's you can find your people. I feel like there's always room for you to find like amazing people in the creative space.
Yeah. So what impact do you hope to have on Black creators as you continue to build the Reel Noir Network?
That's such a great question. In my mind, the impact is going to be like felt internationally, where we are creating such strong communities of Black filmmakers that are opening up doors and opportunities for each other, where we're helping and teaching each other, and we're like a lot more accepting of each other, and we are making it okay to be diverse in corporate America because, in this world, they're trying to act like we're just fill-ins, like we have no talent. But at the end of the day, we are so talented. And so I just want to create better spaces where we're able to feel empowered, able to like build our creative muscles. And I feel like that will be the impression that the Reel Noir has on the world, is that we are that space for Black filmmakers. We are the Black variety magazine. My vision is to be as big as American Black Film Festival, Essence Festival. Like I want to be as big as those companies. Yeah.
That's great. Where can folks find you? I was going to ask a different question, but I want you to give us your contact information first, and then I'll ask you the final question.
Oh, sure.
So where can folks find you?
They can find me at the Reel Noir Network on Instagram, also our website. And then my personal is Meah Denee, and it's MEAHDENEE. And the Reel Noir Network is the REELNOIRE Network.
Thank you. So my final question is around your younger self, and especially having, created the Reel Noir Network, and before that, the Real Effect.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell, or what resource maybe of the Reel Noir Network would you encourage your younger self to access?
Oh, I would definitely say young Meah needs to hit up the free resources tab on our website, where it, it's kind of like introductory information, but there's also some like intermediate information about the entertainment industry. We talk about like some trends that's happening within the media industry, specifically for Black creatives. And then also make sure they hit up the events tab, because they need to know what events are happening around the country. Like what events do they need to go to network at. And the last one, they need to go to our podcast page, because we have podcasts and we are giving you not only entertainment, but also edutainment. So
yes, edutainment. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Meah. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too. I'm so thankful that you let me be on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
That I let you. Of course. Of course. Thanks so much for joining me for this conversation. I hope that you got as much out of it as I did. Feel free to continue the conversation with us over on Facebook at the Impostrix Podcast Validating Space. We welcome all, and it's a space for us to validate each other as we work through work, race, and imposter syndrome. You can find out more about me or about the podcast at www.impostrixpodcast.com. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast. Until next time, be validated.